Good morning, Roland. How are you?
Good morning, Trevor. I'm very well, and yourself, thank you.
I'm fantastic. Now that all the storms have blown over and we've got a bit of sunshine again, it's different. But anyway, I am so excited about today's session. Well, now we've been doing a bit of preparation, so I do have some ideas. But boy, have I learnt some stuff about security and securing data over the last few days. So I'm sure that all of our listeners are going to learn a lot over the next 30 minutes. So we've got a lot to cover off. So why don't you fire it off, Roland, and let's get into how to protect your data and look after your devices. So away you go.
Fantastic. Well, Trevor, thanks very much. I mean, I've been working in IT for several years now, and security is an interesting thing because I find that people don't tend to pay a lot of attention to security until something goes wrong. Until there's a breach in security, they are not that excited to talk about it. So what I'm hoping to do today is to try and be a bit proactive around security, and in particular for our clientele, Trevor. A lot of our clients are in the financial services vertical, and when it comes to securing sensitive data, data loss prevention, locking down your data, you need to be well informed. What we've seen over the last 6 months really is an unprecedented number of phishing attacks aimed at retrieving data from organizations, particularly within Australia. And the attacks that you've seen, Trevor, which we've spoken about, are generally called whaling attacks, where they're going after someone like yourself, the CFO, the big fish in the organization. So some of you guys may remember, 10 years ago we had a lot of phishing attacks coming out of Nigeria, for example. Do you remember those ones? Can you please deposit money into my bank account? Can you please send me your bank account details? That was just a general phishing, the general fish in the sea. The whaling attacks, Trevor, they are aimed at someone like you, and normally it's some type of money transfer. Is that right?
Yeah. So I've had, and it's just an interesting point. Just over the last 30 to 60 days, a lot of emails where people are asking me to pay an account or pay a bill, and I'll look at it and I'll go, oh, we haven't done anything like that. So I'll send it through. I'll send a message through to Dave. What have you bought now? Like what are we spending money on, and all those sort of things. But one thing I've learnt to do, and that's probably because of what we do, is not to go and open attachments from anybody that I don't know.
Yes.
And these have got attachments built into it. So your natural thing is to go, click open it up, and then you open up. We've seen the ones that people are getting. Federal police or tax refunds. We've got
PayPal,
tax refunds,
online banking.
All those things are going on. Yeah. So you've got to be really careful, don't you?
You've got to be really careful, and they're very cleverly worded. Like the phishing attacks were just like a generic thing. Whaling attack is aimed directly at you. It's very well written. It's designed for someone in senior management, and they often put a sense of urgency around it. This needs to be done today. Bypass normal channels of communication, all of that type of wording in it, to try and get people to say, all right, I got to do this. This is my responsibility in the business, to get this bill paid. So, even though we get a lot of we're talking about phishing attacks quite a lot over the next 3 weeks. We're running a series of these security podcasts, but that's somebody outside coming to try and get data from you, an actual attack. But Trevor, the sad reality of it is most security breaches actually happen from internal people, and they're not malicious. It's somebody who accidentally, like we look at a survey, 87% of managers admit to having stored corporate information on their personal email on their cloud service, 58% of people have accidentally sent information to the wrong person. And although our focus tends to be on the personal devices that people use for work, we often don't think about what security we're using for the corporate devices. There's this assumed secure, you just think everybody would do the right thing, even though they may not be informed as to what policies have been put into place for the organization. So it's a policy thing as well as a people thing. So what I wanted to focus on this week, Trevor, is data loss prevention. So how to stop
going back to that first one. So if you look at that first one, where 87% of senior managers, what I see is out on the floor is you'll hear like people say, "Oh, our systems can't do that. That's too difficult. I'd rather use my own. I'll use my own personal email to get that out." And so they don't understand that there's certain restrictions have been put on it and how to manage those restrictions, and that's why they go, "Oh, let's bypass the system. I'll go use my Dropbox account, which is totally unsecured, to go and put corporate documents into, because that's easier to work with than something that's a bit more secure." And it's because they just don't either. They don't understand what data protection rules have been put in place into their business.
Or why they're being put.
Or they're too complex.
Well, they're too complex, and this is something that we're going to talk about today. Is security is a fine, or networking is a fine balance between security and enablement. We must make it secure but still workable. If we make it too secure, it's not going to be workable, and then people will circumvent it. So there's a big education piece in here, which is why we're running the series of podcasts, okay? So first thing I want to look at today is stopping that data leaving your organization. So, Trevor, I know from talking to you, you've had some experience with intellectual property leaving one of your businesses. Could you?
Exactly. When I ran my accounting firm, one of our staff decided to leave. And it was only that you go back and you go and look on all their systems and check what emails are coming through and so forth. And we saw that their email accounts and their deleted items, everything had been wiped out before they left. So, we naturally got a little bit suspicious and asked our IT guys to go and have a look at the emails that had been sent out, because that's what we did. And we found a whole heap of emails containing our IP.
All right.
Systems, processes, all of those sort of things, worksheets, work papers, had been forwarded to their personal email address.
All right, so they've actually taken all your sensitive information, all your intellectual property, and used your systems to export that to themselves, so they can give themselves a foot up in their new business. Right.
Yeah, and when we spoke to them, they said, "Oh, well, I made a lot of these, they're mine," and all of those sort of things. But if somebody works for you, it's your
intellectual property. If someone is paying your salary whilst the intellectual property is created, the IP belongs to them. That's in your employment contract normally. So here's some questions we need to ask ourselves before we start implementing policies and clicking buttons. What is my sensitive data? Okay. How can I control access to these? How can I control access where and when they're used? Okay, how do I track them? And have I met my compliance and governance requirements? So what we've got to do is, this takes some planning and some educating out to our people. We've got to go set up a data loss prevention policy, and it's going to be a condition followed by an action. For example, if you send a tax file number, so that's the condition. If you have a tax file number, what will the action be? It will be blocked. If you send someone's credit card number, it may give you an alert. Okay, so this data loss prevention policy takes some planning. I've put a link in the PowerPoint there, guys. And what I want you to do is go and have a look at that and work with your teams about how you're going to implement a data loss prevention policy for your organization. The most simple way I can put it is getting the right information to the right person on the right device. And there are some standard policies in play in Office 365. So, for example, on the right-hand side there, I can see Australian bank account number, Australian driver's license, Australian medical account, passport number, tax file number. There are some other...
These are set standard in
Office 365.
Office 365.
Yes.
So this is the thing that we found. I recall when we put Office 365 on, and I know Nick's listening to this and he'll recall this, that, our team, we're getting a little bit frustrated because they were trying to send information out that previously hadn't been checked.
Yes.
And they didn't know how to get it out, and so those frustrations. So it's very important you understand, firstly, what's standard.
Yes.
In there. Things like credit card numbers and so forth. Our industry just does not protect those details well enough. And we've seen lots of examples of businesses that we're dealing with that just don't manage credit card details and credit card numbers properly, and when I'm talking about that is on when people are paying invoices and so forth. There's strict rules and there's severe penalties for breaching those details.
Exactly. So there's penalties that are going to be enforced by the governing bodies. There's penalties that are going to be enforced by your customers when you have broken the trust.
Yes. So
there's a lot of pain coming if you don't manage this properly. And people, one of the policies that you've got, the default policies you've got in Office 365 is a PCI compliant template. So you could put the PCI compliant template in it. And I just want to run through, Trevor, with you the way that data loss prevention works, just so you get an idea, because I find that people configure this. We're talking about, setting it up in Adobe, setting passwords on different files and that. Whereas we can configure this as a policy. So that means we set the rules once, they apply multiple times, okay? So what the administrator will do is he will set some configuration. This is after you've done all of your planning, guys. We need planning around this with your management team. Then we're going to set our policy, and then we're going to say, well, what does that policy apply to? And we could say the policy applies to Exchange, it could apply to SharePoint, to OneDrive, to Outlook. So the policy is then distributed across the workload. This is known as the scope of the policy, okay? So our policy, in the case of a PCI compliant policy, would say we will not allow credit card information to be sent through Outlook, through OneDrive, or through SharePoint, so even in a document in SharePoint. Then for our workers, what we get is we got contextual policy education. What does that mean? It means that when they try to do something that violates the policy, they will be given a tip saying, what you're trying to do now, sending a credit card number out via email, is restricted through our policy. And it'll give them a different options. But what we also need to do is clearly articulate this message out to the business around the change management that's taking place, guys.
Because if they don't know that, what they'll do is they'll just read it and think that the email's broken.
Yep.
Take it from someone who does that. I'll be pushing things out and I'll go, I don't get this.
Why won't my email go? It keeps telling me, there's something wrong with my email. When somebody sends an email, the back-end policy is going to evaluate that email and see if it violates any of the terms of the policy. All right. At that point, if it does violate it, it's going to record it and audit it so the administrator can view it at a later stage as to who has violated or broken any of the policies. So the policy is, instead of applying security each time around different documents, like you might say, well, I'm going to password protect this PDF. What we can do is do a broad stroke of the brush and protect a lot of data from leaving our organization by configuring a policy. So we could say, for example, all the content on SharePoint that would have been Trevor's intellectual property, all his policies and procedures. We can say anything from that site, that SharePoint site, is going to be protected and not allowed to leave our organization. So, data loss protection in Office 365 is really available in email, Outlook, Outlook Web Access, SharePoint, and OneDrive for Business, and then Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, okay? So it enhances the security capabilities, identifies and updates you on any policy changes, and then educates you when it's come through. So when the policy is put into play, it'll say to you, these are the sections of the policy that you're currently about to violate. All right. So is it possible to repackage policies for accounting practices? So there's a question in there, or do we need to develop policies specifically for our businesses? The default policies that we've got in play are around PII, so personally identifiable information, PCI, so your credit card information, really. Then there's a lot of other policies around different industries. So what I would recommend doing is clicking on that link I shared previously, looking at what templates are available, but you do, Jacinta, need to say what business pain points are we trying to address? What is our sensitive information? Those questions are one of those first slides when you're saying, what is it that we're trying to protect, is going to be dependent on your business, and you will need to plan your policies accordingly. Yes, most of you would have similar sort of pain points. And for example, the PCI compliant template would be one that would go a long way to meeting all of your requirements. But there may be some other business specific requirements for each of you that you may want to address. So what I'm saying is, don't just think that the default template, the PCI compliant template, is going to meet all of your requirements, and you may want to increase or decrease the settings on the policy. What I mean by that is, you could say, well, if somebody violates the policy, I would like just an alert to be sent, okay? Or I would like to encrypt the data. You may choose to override, or you may even choose to block it entirely, okay? Yep. So like Nick says, if you look in the I window, guys, the financial services and PII requirements match most of what our accounting customers need. Okay. So if you need to do some planning around the policies. If your policies aren't configured yet, you could contact support at HubOne.com and put in a support request to get some policies put in place for you around data loss protection. There are, people often say to me, what happens if once the information has left the organization? So I might want to share information with somebody, but it not to go any further. I don't want it to find itself on a website. I don't want to find itself on some wiki page, okay? So once we want to share information and shared protection, what we've got to look at there is actually encrypting the data before it goes out of the organization, and then controlling it once it goes out of the organization. So to give you a bit of an idea, I'm just going to share my desktop here. And
while you're doing that, what I was talking about before I got cut off was that what we'll tend to do is we'll manually go and change and set those parameters on that. So we'll take it out to a PDF and make it read only, or that people can't copy or download it.
Yes.
But what you're going to show now is you can set those permissions on all of your different devices, because we're encouraging everybody to use different forms to communicate, different forms of communication.
Yes.
And if we just have policies around PDFs, well, then we're not covering off emails, we're not covering off Word documents, SharePoint sharing. Even what you're going to show us now is even presenting using Skype for Business.
Exactly. So what we're doing here, if we talk about rights management protection, so this is a step up of data loss prevention. Data loss prevention is going to sit on your Office 365 tenant, and it's going to make sure that certain information does not leave your cloud environment, okay, through any form. If you want information to be shared, but control the sharing of that information, what we can do is, and I'm going to show you an example of emails. Yeah, if everybody opens up a new email, and I've got some feedback on these sessions, guys. Some of the people are saying that they are not doing the exercises when we're talking you through them. So I want to make sure that everybody is out there opening. Just click on new email. What I want you to then do is click on the options tab in your email, and you should have a permissions tab. And you can see I'm clicking on the permissions tab in my email at the moment. And I've got unrestricted access, do not forward, HubOne Enterprise, HubOne Enterprise Confidential, and View Only. So what I can do, if I'm sending this email to Trevor, I could choose to do HubOne Enterprise, Confidential, and View Only. And what I'll be doing is each time I'll actually be configuring permissions for this particular email. So for example, this content can only be used for internal users. This content cannot be modified. So it can't be modified, changed, forwarded. So what will it look like? Well, it won't look like much, actually, because I've got another email sitting right behind here that Trevor sent me earlier today using these permissions, HubOne Enterprise, Confidential, View Only. Now I'm going to share that with you. So here's the question. What do you think is going to happen when I try and share it through Skype for Business? Let's have a look. Okay, so Currently, what I can see on my screen is an email from Trevor with credit card details, but it has also been configured with the rights management services policy, confidential view only. You can see nothing.
Yeah, you're getting a blank. Well, I'm getting a blank screen.
He's got a blank screen, and you're thinking
you
there's something wrong with the.
You see the email normally.
Yeah, I'm seeing the email normally. You're seeing a blank screen because this email has been locked down. So when I go to try and share it, copy, paste, it just gives me an absolute blank screen here. So
try and copy the credit card, for example. Can we see the?
What I can do, I'll show you. Okay, I can choose to view permissions. How's that? So what I can do is I can right-click on the email and choose to view permissions. And that's all you can see is the actual permissions. You can't see the email. So this is allowed to be viewed. It's not allowed to be edited, copied, printed, saved, exported, replied, forwarded, accessed programmatically. So I'm trying to access it programmatically now through Skype for Business. And it's saying, Roland, you can't do that because this email has rights management services or RMS wrapped around it. Therefore, you have no access to view any of that content. So, you know, you got
and that's turned on standard, or is that something that we have to turn on, or that has to be turned on?
That's a very good question, Trevor. The DLP or data loss prevention stuff, okay, the data loss prevention policies are standard within Office 365, but what you were looking at there is a feature called rights management. So you can see I've got Azure rights management services there. And Azure Rights Management Services it's actually an add-on to Office 365 for additional security. So it's something, a lot of our customers have this. The guys who've got Intune and that out there already have this feature available. And why I wanted you to go into Outlook and try change the permissions on that email is because I want you to see whether you've got that or not, whether that is something that is available to you, and whether your rights management policies can be configured. So, guys, this is a way of protecting your data that you want to share with other people, but you don't want to overshare. Okay? Sometimes we share with other people, then we give them the ability to forward that on, cut and paste, or share that information with other people in the organization that we may not trust. This is going to allow you to share, but still maintain some form of control over the content that you're sharing. And how we're doing that is data encryption, access control, document tracking, and this goes across any device that uses industry standards, but it is part of the rights management services.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right. So
it's so important. You've got to understand what's going on there, because your team are going to get frustrated when they try and do things, and then they'll try and forward something on, and it comes back with a message saying, well, you can't do that. And if you don't know that that's set on your system, you'll get frustrated.
You'll get very frustrated. And what people end up doing is sharing stuff through USB. You know, and that's, again, security versus enablement. USB is an incredibly powerful enablement tool. It's really good. So my question is, you know, to all the people on the call, has anybody stored corporate information on a USB disk? And I'm going to say 90% of the people are going to say, yes, we have, okay? Secondly, and you can type this in the IM window, has anybody ever lost a USB key? Has anyone ever dropped one or lost a USB key? And I bet you people start typing in the window, they'll be, yes, I have, yes, I have, yes, I have. I've lost several of them. Yes, yes, yes. So if you've got all your security, if that's your form of storing information and securing information, yet you lose them, okay, there's no security wrapped around that. Now, there are things we can do to secure USB keys, but again, we spoke about this actually in our Windows 10 session, talking about some BitLocker stuff. All right, locking down and encrypting drives, whether it's your hard drive on your machine or a USB drive. But good. So, okay, Kirsten at least had an encrypted USB key. That's very good. Okay, so but most people don't encrypt it. But one of the things that we could use there would be BitLocker to encrypt USB keys.
Ask the other question, Roland. Has anybody ever found a USB key?
Yeah, has anybody ever found a USB key?
And then used it?
Yes. Yes, I know. Found a USB key and then used it. So that's another way that people break into your organization. USB keys, social engineering, or conning, really.
Isn't it? Right. And people run around car parks and throw USBs out. They hand out USBs and everybody grabs them and goes, "Oh, beauty."
Yeah, well, that's
10 gig USB.
Make it enticing. Give them like 128 gig USB key. I'd be excited to find one of those in the car park, Trevor. 8 gig, I wouldn't get that excited by. All right, guys. So that's data loss protection and rights management. Next week, okay, come along, get your, if you've got people who do wire transfers in your organization, the guys who do your online banking, your CFOs, please encourage them to attend next week, okay? Next week we're going to be talking about securing your device. How safe is my device? We're going to be talking about two-factor authentication. We're going to be talking more about whaling attacks, and we're going to be looking at best practices for avoiding this. We touched on a few of these already today, Trevor. If in doubt, don't. Okay? Yeah. So, if you're not sure who the email's from, don't open it. If it's somebody urgently asking for a bank transfer, it's not real. Make a telephone call, pick up the phone, talk to the person who it seems to be coming from. Check if that is a legitimate email or not. Okay? Is penetration testing worthwhile for an organization? Yes, I do believe penetration testing is worthwhile. Not so much for your cloud services. Most of our customers have their stuff in Office 365, and in that case, I'm going to say penetration testing is not essential. But when it comes to doing things like accessing your networks, your wireless access points, the security around that, I believe that penetration testing is something that should be done. So engage a legitimate or a trustworthy penetration testing organization, and again, you can reach out to the support team and we could possibly recommend somebody for it, okay? But yeah, penetration testing is something, again, that people only do after they get broken into. So the fact that Katie's asking, is it worthwhile doing before we get broken into, I think is a step in the right direction. Okay, so next week, guys, best practices, securing your CFO, making sure they're not doing really dodgy bank transfers. Okay, so, guys, I think that's all from me. Trevor, have you got any other questions?
No, that's it. Thanks, Roland. Right. That's it. Like, this is a really, really pertinent point at the moment. We're talking about two-factor authentication. We know a lot of the cloud applications are moving that way. And we need to think about those things and how it works and why do we do it. So catch you all next week. As we always say, please share this out to everybody you know. These are really valuable sessions where you learn a lot. So invite anybody you like to come along.
Exactly. And guys, the real cost of this stuff, last week I was reading about a whaling attack in Australia that cost $65 million to the company. So Australia's been targeted, Trevor's been targeted, our customers are being targeted at the moment, hence we're running this series. So please join us, get your friends, get your family to join in and learn a little bit more about security. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Trevor.
Thanks, Roland. We'll catch you later.